Moving really fast.
Sorry.
Man's behind us. Okay, good evening. My name is Tim Hendricks. Thank you for allowing us to be back here again this evening regarding the property here on both sides of 73 Heimbach and 73 or Big Road. We've talked previously. I've been in here a number of times on my own just to kind of have some general conversations. Tonight, Susan Rice here is the project engineer, partner, principal at STA, the engineer for the project. So thought we'd get a little bit more technical tonight. And Carl Wiener here, who just did a presentation with you, is with Hamburg Rubenball and Maxwell Lubin, as you know, and he's here with us tonight as well. So we're getting a little bit more serious than we have in the past, asking a little bit more technical questions and want to be able to answer your questions in so doing. By way of update as to where we're at, I don't think there's anything new, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. We have had some conversations early on with respect to the various parcels, contains maybe 185 acres plus or minus real round numbers along Heimbach. Obviously on the north side is the Frederick community. We're on the south side, that is east of Big Road, and the rest of the property is west of Big Road. West of Big Road, and you've seen this property in various iterations for a long time. We had submitted a couple of plans, and if we go back far enough, there were some possibilities on this site that were maybe not ultimately what the township was hoping to see. Frankly, one of them with a lot of apartments, which would be permitted in today's zoning. I think we heard loud and clear, that's not really what makes a lot of sense here. We're okay with that. What we currently have in front of you is a combination of single-family detached, what we all think of as single-family homes, and then single-family attached, what we all think of as a townhome. With the townhomes, we are proposing that at least all of the end units would be wider and set up so they have a first floor master bedroom or primary bedroom, so that is able to accommodate to be 55 and over. And we really target the west side of 73 as being that kind of 55 and over targeted market, however anybody could live there. On the east side, which looks on the board over here, on the easel over here, that would be what we think of as our typical single-family homes. We have received detailed reviews from both your engineer and your planner. We have gone through them and we boiled it down primarily through Susan as the engineer. We boiled it down to 12 questions that we had that required some feedback. Based off the feedback on those 12, we will revise the plans, resubmit the plans, get additional reviews, and then hope to be back in front of you again to talk further. Those 12 items are the items that we need some direction on, and the good news is, because of the hour of tonight, about half of them have already been answered by Norm. There he is, he moved. Were you over here earlier?
I was giving you
Yeah,
more
okay, I appreciate that.
I know you
I'm just looking around like, Susan doesn't look like Norm, sorry.
I'm hiding in the corner.
Norm has narrowed down about half of the review comments, giving us direction. Like I said, the 12 came from us, not from Norm. They came from us and not from Ed. After we reviewed their letters, we said, hey, we need some clarification, and a number of those, that clarification has been received. In those 12, there was an email that went to Norm from Susan. Norm responded. Maybe you have that email. I don't know that it's critical one way or the other. Only there was a number of items that he said you really need to get feedback from the Planning Commission on what they're looking for. And that's why we're here. That's because we've been directed to see you on these items, get feedback, and obviously we need the feedback in order for us to revise our plans. But we've also been in front of the Board of Supervisors and believe that we came away with saying, hey, work with the Planning Commission, see what they're comfortable with, get a recommendation from them before you come back to us. So, with that being said, in no particular order other than our letter, the first item I want to talk about is parking. And I will be discussing this from a 40,000 foot level, because that's where I work best. Susan is here on the technical, and obviously you can look to your planner and engineer. We have our solicitor here. But I think the issue, Norm, correct me if I'm wrong, the issue is, really the biggest issue is, do you count the parking in a garage on a townhome as a parking unit? Your ordinance is pretty clear on how many parking spaces you need. And I'll go so far as to say, I think your ordinance is clear that you can count the parking space. However, we're looking to make some changes to your ordinance that will ultimately allow the plan that we all want to see as kind of that best compromise. And in fairness, some of those things that you may want to see changed might require, in this case, for instance, additional parking. So really, I guess, am I correct, Norm, that it's, I mean, the question is, do we count the parking space in the garage, and then also the length of the driveway in front to have an adequate parking there without a vehicle hanging over onto the garage? Onto the sidewalk. A big picture, that's kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'd say that's fairly accurate. The idea is that we talked about writing an ordinance for a unique property that won't necessarily comply. It won't be a by right, potentially. That's what Tim is presenting. And I've just seen a number, anytime you drive through any type of a townhouse community, single family detached for that matter, on a summer day and you see garage doors open, they're usually filled with plastic. And that's kids' toys, whatever that might be. People have the best of intentions, but inevitably you don't park a car there. The other issue that I have seen in townhouse type of communities is very often the work vehicles are taken home by anyone in a trade. And the reason I say the trades is because usually that involves an extended cab, 4-door pickup, 6.5 foot bed, 8 foot bed. And if you require 20 feet from the garage to the inside edge, if you will, of the sidewalk, you have people walking in the streets. They can't fit there. So I think that is a dimension that's very important. And then that ties into your sidewalk width, your grass strip, your curbing, things like that. I think it's very important for the township's sake to lay that out. So as far as counting a parking space inside there, and often I just mentioned a work vehicle you take home, then very often that's at least a 3-car family. So as far as a number goes, I've just seen a number of different townhouse facilities, developments that I've driven through where parking is always an issue. So I just think it's something that the planning commission needs to think about from a geometry standpoint, from a number standpoint, because regardless of how clear the ordinance is, we're really outside of that. And if we're writing
If we don't count the garage, what's our ordinance require now as far as parking?
I don't know off the top of my head, and it's your
2 spaces per
2
unit.
per dwelling unit, and then single family attached is 2.25.
And the garage is, I'm
Any other
sorry.
questions, sir?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that this is going to be, the parking's going to be wide enough that there's not trucks or cars hanging out in the road, so that if we have to go in with fire trucks, that we're not going to have a problem.
Yeah, that's what we're discussing right now.
Yeah, that's the geometry part of what I'm saying. Whether you call a parking space, allow it 9 by 18, 10 by 20 from a geometry standpoint, and then also from the front of the dwelling to the sidewalk. That's what you're referring to. And so often you drive there and you see that issue. When you call it 20 feet, if something's 20 feet long, nobody's pulling all the way up to the garage. They're hanging into the sidewalk, and then people are wind up walking out in the street to do that. So I just think it's something that was worth pointing out for the planning commission's sake.
Some people park on this, along the sidewalk, in the road,
Sure.
and then you
Sure.
can't get through.
If I can just jump in, I agree with what Norm said. What I'd like to do is maybe complicate this a little bit and address another item. One of the few items on our list of what we talked about was, and Norm referenced it now, so I'm bringing it up. Oftentimes you'll have your street, then you'll have a curb, then you'll have a grass strip, then you have sidewalk, then you have your driveway. We need a longer driveway to get the vehicle. You're gonna get a townhome pretty far from the street. That ultimately, just to add all the pieces together, again, it's geometry, it's math, whatever. Sue, can you show what we're talking about with rolled curb and sidewalk? We are comfortable with going more than 20 feet to address that issue of that work truck. We're comfortable with adding additional parking. We're just trying to figure out how we make everything work. One thing is that helps without getting, the challenge with the typical curb, we all know when you have a curved road, you end up with maybe an 8-inch reveal, and then you push your sidewalk back 3 or 4 feet for your grass strip. You need to get up 8 inches in that 3 or 4 feet to go up a plateau to get across your sidewalk when you get back there to match your driveway. What we're proposing, what we've done elsewhere, is a rolled curb. It's still a structural, it's still formed, it's basically poured with the same concrete form, slip form machine essentially. Roll curb, then you put your sidewalk right on that, and then you can leave more room for a longer driveway without putting your, correct. Then you can leave more room for your driveway without pushing your townhome further than the street. We have not run this by Norm, I don't know what your thoughts are, and obviously we'll hear what they are. This is not something we've presented to anybody, I'm bringing it up here for discussion, but what I guess we're thinking is maybe a solution here. And I believe Norm, you brought up the width of the sidewalk, I know Ed brought up the width of the sidewalk. Thinking with townhomes, and I don't mean, I'm kind of putting all the issues, almost all the issues on the table at one time, but maybe we can kind of solve all of these items with, for instance, we figure out what is an appropriate driveway. Maybe it's 22 feet, maybe it's minimum sidewalk, back of sidewalk, house side of sidewalk, to the front of the garage, minimum 22 feet. We pick a number, and then we agree, okay, that's what it is. We pick a number for parking spaces that we can all live with, and we agree the garage doesn't count. Now, we gotta find whether it's additional parking, whether it's a wider street, can't block driveways, whatever else, then we can go back and work on that, and then maybe as a compromise, we can do the roll curb, giving us some extra space to work with, and, I don't know if it was Ed or Norm brought up, maybe a wider sidewalk for the townhomes, no, we agree to 5 feet. Maybe do 4 feet on the single family detached, which is a wide sidewalk, some are 3. Maybe 5 feet in the townhomes. So that way you got a lot of space in the street, you're safe for walking along there, and you got a lot of space from the driveway in to the house. You can park a bigger vehicle there, and we agree we need to find the additional parking. Is something like that a solution? Ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're looking for is what we want to do, so that we can go back and design it, show that it works, and bring that back for you to see it on paper.
And I think connected to that is parking on the street. Is
Yes.
that gonna be permitted?
If the street's wide enough, can we park on the street as long as we're not blocking sidewalks? I mean, that would be up to your
How much
engineer.
parking can you even get in the townhome area though, with all the driveways?
Right, not much, right?
Yeah.
But it's more in the single family that
Okay.
you can get.
We realize we can't block any driveway depressions at all. Can't happen.
But I mean.
So you're not gonna,
typically-
in a row of townhome buildings, you can't get any.
Exactly.
Exactly right. But we're just asking the content, and then in that area, it wouldn't be a reason to make it a wider road either, because we wouldn't park it. It would just be wide enough, whatever the fire needs, whatever you guys need for your access. Norm will verify what all those need to be, and then it would just be areas where we could park on the street, that we would go with a wider road, so you don't reduce any of your ability to get in there and travel.
Yes, sir.
My thoughts is that it would be better if we don't have the parking on the street, because if you got fire trucks coming in, you got hoses coming off, trying to get around the cars, I think would be more of a hassle.
I mean, talking out of turn here, but why are we talking about parking and driveway? We haven't even come up with a total number of units, where the sewer plant's going, water
We
problems.
can jump to those now.
It seems like that's more important at this
Okay.
end of the game.
Then let's talk about that.
Worrying about
Absolutely,
parking.
absolutely. Let's
Yeah,
talk about that.
I mean, I'm just one person, what's the rest?
Yep. No, I was only going down through the order that I had, no problem. Let's jump to density, that's the biggest challenge, let's talk about that. There have been a number of numbers floating around. One of them, I think, came from us somewhere along the line. Ed agreed, we're entitled to 319 units here. Ed's comment was, you're not gonna wanna build apartments. You guys said, no, we don't want apartments, and somehow we got rid of 50 units to get down to a number that Ed's feeling he's comfortable with.
319 now?
His Ed,
That was
his
with
letter.
apartments, but without
Oh,
apartments.
with apartments.
I think that's the number was 274.
Yeah, based on the by right plan that
This
they
is
have.
319 units.
But that was without taking any consideration of steep slopes or floodplain or,
No, actually, that was factoring all that in. That was
Yeah, it
factoring all
was
that
based on
in.
the information.
No, that was,
they gave
all
us
that
on
was factored in.
okay.
Somehow we had a lot less units, and I haven't been making an issue of it, we kept units on the plan. You know, we're willing to meet somewhere in between. We are allowed to build permits, I'm not saying, I mean apartments, I'm not saying that in a threatening way, we had this conversation before. We're proposing 297, and we gotta resolve a number, the question is, how much are we working together, how much are we not, and we always have that option to do the apartments, and like I said, I'm not trying to put Ed on the spot, but his letter, if you don't have it, it's right here, and it says 319 is what's permitted, and that's with all the steep slopes and wetlands and all that stuff factored out.
Although, Norm, didn't you in a subsequent review indicate that the net acreage was less than what it had earlier been estimated to be?
Admittedly, there's been a lot of iterations
I
and a
know.
lot of
I
letters.
know.
Okay, I do remember not getting to a point where we were comfortable from a natural resource standpoint necessarily to come up with a number as far as the number of units. But ultimately, I think what this comes down to, and if Ed was confident in his 319 is from an apartment standpoint, everyone can certainly understand an apartment takes up a lot less space than a single-family detached. Okay, and if Tim wants to market 319 single-family detached, we might have side yard widths of about 2 feet. Okay, and lot sizes of 5,000 square feet. So really, that's what's happening, and that's why you're writing an overlay ordinance to nail down the ordinance requirements that you can't make work.
Well, that's
The,
the age
I'll clarify,
qualified.
the
overlay.
319 was their figure, based on plans they produced in June of '22. That wasn't a number I ever came up with.
Right, so you just called it out in your review
I just
there.
added up the
Yeah.
numbers that
Yeah,
they showed
numbers.
on the plan.
Do you want to claim that 319 is not due?
Well, I
We
guess
can justify it.
I guess we need to see if the net acreage,
Let's just say
Yeah.
319 are available. What are we saying? We're saying, forget it, do 319 apartments if you want? I don't understand where we're keep going back to, I mean, this was justified off of wetland surveys, updated wetland surveys, everything, we did everything, we went all through everything. These plans are all, that nothing is from plans from anything longer than 18 months ago, nothing. No boundaries, no wetlands, no, we did bog turtle survey, we did bog turtle habitat survey, we've been through everything.
Norm, the overlay ordinance you just referenced, is that the age restricted? overlay?
No, overlay ordinance is what would be created to allow.
To allow this,
Correct.
that you don't currently have,
And that's the reason we're talking about the length of the driveway, the sidewalk width, mountable curb, not mountable curb, beauty strip, all that kind of stuff, because they're the geometry, those type of things that would not be a by right situation, that the township would be willing to agree to in lieu of a
So-
apartment.
So if we do not agree to that, then Mr. Hendricks is saying he's gonna go to apartments. Is that
Right.
okay?
He could-
I have the right to
He
do
could-
it, I'm not here to threat, I'm trying to work something out, but
Right.
we're saying, okay, there's a higher number out there, but it's not what anybody wants. You guys don't want it, we'll need more apartments here.
And he can come in at by right units, absolutely. But when you go back and you crunch the numbers in the sales office, from a profitability standpoint, your single families are the reason that he wants to come in with single families. Every time you go from an apartment to a townhouse to a single family, your profits are going up. Okay, and he's got every right to do that if the township is not comfortable or does not want to concede to apartments, okay? And they're willing to make that concession, to write that overlay district, if you will, okay, then the township is giving up something that's not really tangible to them. Tim wants to go in that direction. If it's something that's more appealing to the township and the township is comfortable with the concessions that they'd be giving up in that overlay district, then you could move forward. That's the reason you're here discussing that, discussing 272 units versus 319. It's dollars.
So if we're not comfortable, then we have the option to call this bluff to see if he builds apartments.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, and what you have, I mean, what it comes down to, again, is if you've got an apartment building that has 16 units in it, it takes up a certain footprint. You've only got a certain geometry, a certain acreage. So if you take those 16 apartments and turn them into 16 dwelling units, okay, you're giving up something. You're giving up a rear yard, a side yard, a lot size, whatever that might be, okay? So that's essentially what's happening here, and that's why we're talking about a combination of whether it's townhouses and single families. Ideally, you'd love to go with single families. You've got a higher price
Do we have
point,
60% open space?
okay? But,
Yeah.
so that's really what's going on here.
Ultimately, we're trying to do some kind of a preservation compromise, if
So
you
why don't you
will.
build all single families?
You wanna do that?
So, yeah, we already reduce your number of units.
Is that how many?
I don't know.
No, I mean, what's currently permitted is single-family and apartments. We were trying to come in with a compromise of townhomes. If you want to give me all single-family homes and we can agree to a number, then we'll go that route. I mean, that's certainly an option. Right now, Susan's looking, but we're, what, 60% open space, maybe more, something like that, but she's looking. But, you know, I mean, obviously it's more singles and you have less open space. It's all the trade-offs. I mean, it's what Norm said, it becomes all the discussions become geometry, it's math. You know, the more singles you have, the less open space you have. You know, if you put some townhomes in, you have more open space. So what do you want? I mean, we want to work together. We're also, you know, every one that sets these plans costs a lot of money, and sooner or later we just need to nail it down and agree to do something.
The ordinance proposes 50%.
50% for proposed.
Minimum, yes, minimum, but we're higher than
And what ordinance are you looking at right now?
This is what we would propose to allow the plans. We created an ordinance that we submitted for review against these plans, some changes that would go to your ordinance that would allow these plans to happen. Right, Norm? That was our goal. They're not perfect. would
They have to
review back and
quantify
forth.
it somehow, and then once they quantify it, you look at it at let's say, a zoning district that is most comparable, see how it compares to your ordinance and see what your comfort level is to that. One of the big issues we had along some of the residential property lines was buffers. Buffers, rear yards, things like that. That's what you will give up, the more single families you want to go with.
In the R80 area.
Exactly. If you say, let's go with more townhouses, all of a sudden, you start putting things together, you reduce your single families, you could have larger rear yards, potentially larger, wider property line buffers, things like that. Because it comes down to a geometry thing and space.
While you're thinking, the other item you mentioned was the sewer plant. We had met at a staff level and talked some with your sewer engineer. We had chosen a location that seemed to make the most sense.